So you have just been getting started with using Claude Code and you now want to deploy your app to production, just like all the other software engineers do. In this video, I'll show you my non-techie introduction to make sure that everything is properly deployed and that you are able to program from everywhere around the world, just like I was doing here while I was on vacation on Bora Bora. My development setup is like this. I'm mostly going to be programming via Telegram directly. I do not want to start Claude Code in the terminal. That's very techy. I do want to speak directly to my Claude Code via Telegram, ideally. To do this, the first thing you need is you need to get yourself a virtual server somewhere. And what I recommend that you do is you just go to Hetzner or any other virtual server provider and rent yourself a root server there. Then next up, go to your terminal and ask your terminal to start your Claude Code and ask your Claude Code to set up the server for you and ask it to install Claude Code for you on the server. Now that is done, then afterwards you can do is you can ask it to set up Telegram for you. And that's the next step. Ask it to log in into Telegram and Claude Code on the server for you. So then you already have your cloud server set up. And the big advantage of this is that you can always program via Telegram. No matter where you are, you can just speak to your phone. And this, I would say, is the most non-tech friendly way of getting started with programming. So in this case, here I was discussing with it. This is my Claude Code running on the server on writing this LinkedIn post because somebody asked me to publish a video on this. And now let's review the LinkedIn post I want to write. And by setting up my server here, I now have Claude Code running on that particular server and I can ask it to do changes to all my different applications. And you can see I have all these different Claude Code servers running. Each of them is running on a separate server, actually. So by doing this, effectively, I can, while waiting for one agent to finish something, I can already proceed with the next one and just go ahead. Now you're going to end up with a lot of code and a lot of changes. And the hardest part, in my opinion, is always to validate and see how things are actually properly working. And for this, I'm now going to show you how to take this and get everything into production. Okay, so there are services like Heroku that you can use, but in my case, because I have so many applications, I did not want to proceed and use Heroku because it would have been too costly. Instead, I wanted to use something like Coolify, which is pretty much a self-hosted Heroku. Now, to set up Coolify, you will need to get yourself another root server. And by the way, when you're setting up a root server, I highly recommend that you just go ahead with Ubuntu. Ubuntu is always a great way. It has some reasonable defaults and it's a good operating system to begin with. So get yourself a server to set up Coolify for you. So you now have one server that you can control via Telegram. Ask it to give it the credentials of your other server, ask it to set up Coolify for you on that second server. And once that's set up, it's going to look something like this. And here you can see all my different applications pretty much. And I just want to go into one and show you the workflow here. So in this case, that's Chloe. That's one of my products. And the way it mostly works is that you will need two environments. In this case, I do have some background jobs, so it's a bit more complicated, but normally you just have one application for the regular website for production and one for review apps. And review apps are very important. I'm going to show you in a second. And then you have another service for a database. And for a database, by the way, if you're ever asked, it's always a good idea to use a database such as Postgres, for instance. Okay, so you can set up then your application here, and the way it works is I'm just going to go into the details. You have to configure the domain that you want to use. Build pack, what you want to do is you want to use a Docker file, and then you can link in the database. So that's a very, very good environment. And whenever you deploy something, whenever you push something to GitHub, what it's going to do is it's going to automatically deploy that application for you to production. It also comes with great defaults to manage environment variables, which are secrets. Let's say you configure another service or so, then these environment variables are great. In my opinion, though, the real superpower comes from the review application. So let me show you my workflow here. The review applications allow you, whenever you on GitHub, you open up a pull request, what it's going to do is it's going to here include a link here on the pull request on GitHub and say something like, hey, your review app is ready. And what you can then do is you can click on the link here, and then you can review your code change in a separate application. Note how the URL now has changed here. So whenever I change something, whenever I push something, it's going to create me that review application so that I can test everything standalone from start to finish. And this is a superpower because this way you can test everything and see if everything is working. And only then, when everything is working, you can proceed and go to your pull request and say, in this case, I was building a feature for Claude to make copying websites easier. And then only then you're going to do something like merge. And so this way you can test everything isolated. And then once it's ready, merge it to production. And then it's going to be automatically deployed on production. So summary. Get yourself a server where you install Claude Code on, and you can use your own computer Claude Code to set up the server for you. Then get another server on which you set up Coolify. Ask your Claude Code on your server to configure that server for you. And then proceed and set up these review applications. And that's as easy as, let me show that to you now. I'm going back to production, review apps. I set up another project just for the review apps. Here in this case, I used a Docker Compose file, which is a set of how all the different applications are working together. For production, I'm asking Coolify to manage my database, and I'm asking it to also manage the web server. For the review apps, however, I do not want persistent databases because whenever I deploy something again, it's okay that the old database is gone for the review applications. And then in Coolify, there is this one checkbox here for preview deployments is the name. And by ticking this, it's going to automatically, whenever a new pull request is open, create you that review application. One note, while you're developing everything, I highly recommend that you follow this practice. What you want to have is you always want to have a Docker file. And inside of this Docker file, all your applications dependencies are listed. Now, you do not have to write this Docker file on your own. And frankly, I've been a software engineer for quite some time, and I still don't know how to properly write Docker files. Just ask your Claude Code to write your Docker file. This way, you do not have to install everything on your computer and then also on your server. Everything is nicely isolated in a container. That makes it very nice. And then we can use the same container pretty much also when deploying something to production. On top of that, I highly recommend you, and this is a tip I got from Matthias Endler, another engineer at Trivago, use a make file. A make file is pretty much just a layer on all the different Docker commands. And so what this does is, there's, for instance, a command start. And you don't even have to dive too much into this, but what this is going to do is this is going to start the application, stop the application. And then in terminal, you can just write make start, and that's going to start everything for you without having to worry too much about it. And that, I think, makes it super great. So it's sort of another layer around Docker and Docker Compose. Docker file is for a single thing you want to start, and Docker Compose if you have multiple things you want to start, because typically you do have a database, a web server, and all these kind of things. And lastly, Ruby on Rails. I highly recommend. I've been a Ruby on Rails engineer for a long time, and I still think it's great to build something with AI. It's my base tech stack for everything because it comes with a lot of things like database out of the box and so on. So if you're just getting started, ask your Claude Code to set up a Ruby on Rails application for you. The cool thing is, because Ruby on Rails is very opinionated here by David Heinemeier Hansen, shout out to him. One day I hope I'll be able to make an interview with him. Hey, David. And let me show you the tests. And what it does is, before doing something, before I merge something, I do have a lot of automated tests which are running here. And I see that there's this green check mark here. And only when these automated tests are passing, then I'm confident to merge everything. And this is something that comes by default with Ruby on Rails. So yeah, Ruby on Rails is still a great framework, and it comes with a lot of things like databases out of the box and so on. So that's my recommendation. If you're just getting started and if you're not an engineer, it's definitely great. It covers most of the use cases. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or need more info.